At Christmas dinner, my sister grabbed my crutch and yelled, "Stop pretending. You're just using people." Everyone laughed when I hit the floor. Then Santa walked out from behind the tree, placed his hand on her shoulder, and said the 6 words that changed everything. It was Christmas night, and my own sister, right in front of our entire family, ripped my crutch from my hands and screamed, "Stop faking it. You're just leeching." I crashed to the hardwood floor, surrounded by laughter, whispers, and the chilling sound of someone hitting record on their phone. My parents didn't move. No one helped. But then, from behind the glittering Christmas tree, Santa stepped out, placed a firm hand on my sister's shoulder, and spoke 6 words that froze everyone solid. Before I tell you who he really was and what he said, let me take you back, because this nightmare, this humiliation, it tasted achingly familiar. It had been brewing inside me my whole life. I grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knew your family's reputation, good or bad. Ours was the perfect family. At least, that's what people saw when they looked at my sister. She was the golden child. Bright, athletic, effortlessly charming. Teachers adored her. Neighbors complimented her, and at church, people whispered about her future as if it were a prophecy. Scholarships, leadership, success. My parents just soaked it all in, basking in her glory. Then there was me, the other daughter, the one who came into the world too early, too fragile, too complicated. I spent more days in hospital rooms than on playgrounds. I had surgeries before I even learned my alphabet. I knew the smell of antiseptic better than birthday cake. My parents, bless their hearts, they tried it first. Any decent parent would. But I could see the weariness in their eyes every time a doctor said, "We'll have to keep monitoring her condition." They loved me the way people love burdens. They carried me, but you could feel the resentment in their grip. My sister came home with gold medals and perfect report cards. I came home with medical bracelets and therapy instructions. Every compliment about her felt like a shadow cast over me. I overheard my mother once, thinking I was asleep, whispering on the phone, "I worry what will happen to her when we're gone. She'll never be independent. Who would take care of someone like her? Someone like her." Those words embedded themselves deep inside me, growing roots in my chest. Money flowed freely toward my sister's dreams. Dance classes, summer camps, brand new sports gear, college prep tutors. They called it investing in the future. For me, anything spent was labeled medical expenses. An annoyance. A drain on the budget. My Christmas gifts were always practical. Compression socks, a heating pad, a cheap sweater from the clearance rack. I remember watching my father hand my sister the newest phone one Christmas morning while my mother filmed her excited reaction for Facebook. Then they turned to me with a small, flat gift bag, a refill of joint supplements, and an extra-large pair of winter gloves. "These will keep you warm," my mother said, as if warmth could fill the hollow ache inside me. The next day, my sister's video went viral in our tiny bubble. Hundreds of likes. Such a proud moment. "Your daughter is amazing." Not a single person noticed the girl standing off to the side, holding a bag of vitamins. I never complained. Not once. Complaining would make me ungrateful, and I was already labeled difficult simply by existing. So I learned to be quiet, to move softly, to not make people uncomfortable with my pain. I learned to celebrate my sister's success, even when it pressed on the bruise inside me. I learned to laugh at myself before others could. Most of all, I learned to survive without taking up space. As we grew older, the gap between us widened into a chasm. My sister excelled, became prom queen. I limped through high school, missing weeks at a time for medical appointments. My body never quite kept up. But the worst part wasn't the physical pain. It was watching my parents shine with pride only when she entered the room. It was hearing relatives whisper "poor thing" about me while beaming at her. It was knowing, even as a child, that love in my family was conditional and unevenly allocated. Every holiday season reminded me of that difference. My sister's gifts always sparkled, wrapped in thick ribbons with handwritten notes that my parents spent hours preparing. Mine felt like obligations. Last minute, plain, sometimes useful, but never thoughtful. A pack of medical tape. a discounted scarf. Once, a box of protein bars that weren't even the flavor I could eat due to allergies. My mother just laughed. You're picky. That's why. My father rolled his eyes, as if even my allergies were dramatic. Still, I told myself to be thankful, to not make trouble, to swallow the bitterness like medicine and pretend it didn't burn. I foolishly believed that if I stayed quiet, if I worked hard enough, if I tried to make myself small and easy, one day I might finally earn the kind of love my sister received effortlessly. The day I turned 18, I packed what little I had: 2 boxes of clothes, my medical records, a folder of community college acceptance papers. I left home without fanfare. No one stopped me. No one asked if I had enough money or a plan. My departure was treated like an inconvenience rather than a milestone. But stepping out of that house, it felt like stepping into oxygen for the very first time. The air was thin, but it was mine. I settled into a tiny studio apartment on the edge of a quiet city, a place where no one knew my medical history or my family's obsession with perfection. I worked small jobs, data entry, customer support, anything I could do from home on days when my body refused to cooperate. Necessity taught me speed. Survival taught me skill. I discovered something I had never been allowed to believe about myself. I was capable. More than capable. I picked up online courses in UX design, taught myself how to write clean, intuitive interfaces, then learned content strategy and eventually freelance development. Every client I completed a project for referred me to another. My schedule filled. My confidence grew. For the first time in my life, I began to imagine a future I could shape with my own hands. My parents, of course, assumed I was scraping by on disability checks, something they'd repeat to relatives often, shaking their heads like I was a disappointment they'd given up trying to fix. They never asked where I worked or what I did. They never wondered why I no longer needed financial help. The truth was, I didn't tell them. Not because I wanted to hide, but because I knew exactly what would happen if I shared my success. They would either take credit for it or find a way to weaponize it. Peace for me was built on privacy, and privacy was something I had earned. Within a few years, I had international clients, steady contracts, and savings that would have shocked my parents into silence. But I never flaunted it. I didn't post anything online that could be traced back to me. I didn't mention my income in phone calls. I didn't correct them when they made passive-aggressive comments about people who live off government checks. Let them believe whatever made sense in their world. I had stopped trying to fit into it. My body, of course, remained unpredictable. Some days I walked fine. Some days I needed support. On the worst days, I stayed in bed, muscles stiff, pain twisting through me in slow, cruel waves. The loneliness of living with chronic pain never fully went away. It simply settled into the corners of my life, a quiet, stubborn companion. That was when I met Ethan. He was the physical therapist assigned to my post-surgery rehab. Calm, steady, with warm eyes that saw more than I ever said aloud. The first time I limped into his clinic, bracing for skepticism, he didn't question my pain or my limitations. He didn't make me feel dramatic or fragile or lazy. He didn't compare me to anyone. He simply listened, really listened. And when he said, "I believe you," something inside me cracked open. He challenged me when he needed to, but gently. He celebrated the smallest gains with sincerity. Slowly, without intending to, he became the first person I trusted fully since childhood. We started talking outside of appointments, sharing books, music, stories about growing up, the strange ways adults fail children without ever realizing it. Friendship stretched into connection, and connection deepened into something I had never dared imagine for myself. Love that didn't feel like charity. When Ethan asked me one night, as we sat on his couch with takeout boxes between us, would it be okay if we called this dating? My throat tightened. I said yes, but a part of me was terrified. Not of him, never of him, but of how my family would twist it. They would question why someone like him would want someone like me. They would claim he felt obligated as a doctor. They would say things designed to rot the happiness from the inside. So I told him the truth. I want to keep us private for a while. He nodded without hesitation. Whenever you're ready. It took everything in me not to cry at how simple he made it, how safe. He met only a few people in my life. Close friends, colleagues who treated me with respect, people who had earned a place in my inner circle. My family was never invited into that space. They didn't know I was working in tech, didn't know my freelance career was thriving, didn't know I was managing my therapy plan on my own, and certainly didn't know I had someone who loved me with patience and dignity. I kept it that way because I had learned the hard way. Anything good in my life became a tool for them to manipulate or minimize. Anything I achieved became a threat to the hierarchy they had built, the silent, unspoken rule that my sister shined while I stayed in the shadows. My parents needed that narrative. It made their world tidy. But my world was finally expanding. Ethan saw me in ways they never did. He knew which days my pain spiked before I even said a word. He knew how I tried to hide the tremor in my hands when I was exhausted. He knew my fear of being disbelieved, dismissed, mocked. He knew how deeply that fear was rooted in my childhood. And yet he stayed. Not as a savior, not as a caretaker, but as someone who wanted to walk beside me, even when I needed a crutch to stand. Keeping him secret wasn't an act of shame. It was an act of protection. Protection for him, and protection for the fragile peace I had built away from the chaos of my family. Because I knew, instinctively, painfully, that if they ever learned what he meant to me, they would do what they had always done: tear it apart. I had no idea then that fate was already lining up pieces behind me, that one day, in the most unexpected way possible, Ethan would walk directly into the same room as my family, wearing a red velvet suit, right at the moment everything collapsed. And I had no idea just how much that night would change everything. The year before that disastrous Christmas had begun quietly, almost gently. My work was steady, my routines familiar. Ethan and I had settled into a rhythm that felt like safety, a feeling I hadn't known since childhood. But life has a way of testing the very things you start to trust. For me, the test came in the form of another accident. One slip on a wet staircase outside my apartment building. One sharp crack along my already weakened leg. And suddenly, everything I'd worked to stabilize was thrown into chaos again. The pain was blinding, the swelling immediate. The doctors told me the fall had aggravated old scar tissue and damaged nerve pathways that were already compromised. Walking, which had been manageable with bad days sprinkled between good ones, became unpredictable and painfully difficult. On the worst days, I couldn't put weight on my leg at all. And so, the crutch, once an occasional support, became part of my daily life. Ethan was right there. From the first night in the ER to every rehab session that followed, he rearranged his schedule so he could oversee my treatment personally, guiding me through exercises with steady hands and calmer words than I deserved. He learned the precise angle my knee locked, the exact pressure that caused my muscles to spasm, the subtle tremor in my voice when I was trying too hard to pretend I wasn't in pain. And he shielded me from guilt. Guilt for slowing down. Guilt for canceling plans. Guilt for needing help at all. Your body isn't failing you, he would tell me. It's fighting to keep up. Let it rest when it needs to. If only the people who raised me had possessed even a fraction of that understanding. When my family heard I had injured myself again, the concern they showed wasn't compassion. It was suspicion. It always was. Instead of asking how I was coping or whether I needed anything, my mother called a mutual friend from my hometown and probed for information. Later, that friend confessed to me with an apologetic voice. Your mom asked if you were exaggerating things. Something about disability checks. It hit me harder than I expected. After all these years of independence, after proving that I could survive without their help, my mother still believed illness made me manipulative. Weakness, to her, was a kind of moral failing. My sister didn't even try to hide her contempt. In the family group chat, she wrote, "Here we go again. She likes playing the victim because it's the only time anyone notices her." No one corrected her. Not my parents. Not my extended relatives. Silence gave her permission. Silence always had. And then the rumor started. A cousin, someone who barely spoke to me, had been at the physical therapy center on a day when Ethan was helping me practice taking a few unsupported steps along the wall. It had taken every bit of strength I had. My balance wobbled, my jaw clenched, and I nearly collapsed twice. But to an untrained eye, seen from across the room for only a moment, it looked like I was walking without assistance. By the time the story reached my parents, it had twisted into, I saw her walking perfectly fine. No limp, no crutch. She's exaggerating everything. And my family didn't hesitate to believe it. My father called me that night, not to ask how I was doing, not to say he missed me. Just one question, delivered in a tone dipped in skepticism. So, do you really need that crutch? Or are you just getting used to relying on it too much? I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him understand that chronic pain doesn't vanish just because someone wants it to. But the words lodged in my throat, the same way they had when I was a child being told to stop whining. So I ended the call politely, went to my bathroom, locked the door, and cried over the sink for 5 silent minutes until the wave passed. Then, Christmas approached. The invitation came in a text message, with no warmth at all. Are you coming home this year? If you do, please don't make a big deal out of your situation. Just act normal so the vibe isn't negative. Act normal. As if my pain was a choice. As if my existence disrupted their comfort. I stared at the message for a long time. My leg throbbed beneath the ice pack. The room felt smaller. My childhood felt closer than ever. Those years where every discomfort I expressed was dismissed. Where every need was framed as an inconvenience. Where my sister's ease was the family priority and my struggle was an embarrassment. I didn't want to go. Every part of me recoiled at the thought of returning to that house, that table, that hierarchy. But there was a stubborn part of me, too. A quiet, weary part that kept whispering, maybe this year will be different. Ethan noticed I'd gone still. What happened? I handed him the phone. He read the message, his jaw tightening, his eyes darkening with a protective edge I had come to recognize, an expression he wore whenever someone undermined me, even unintentionally. You don't owe them a performance, he said gently. You don't have to go. I know, I whispered, but it's Christmas. He didn't push. He simply rested his hand on my knee, warm and steady, and said, if you choose to go, you won't be alone. I won't let you walk into that house without someone on your side. I didn't know then how deeply he meant those words. I didn't know he was already thinking ahead, already watching for the warning signs my family always ignored, already preparing to protect me in a way no one ever had. I just knew that for the first time since childhood, I had someone who wouldn't look away. Someone who believed me completely. Someone who would stand with me even if the entire room turned against me. And on that Christmas night, that promise would become a reality in the most unexpected way imaginable. The day of Christmas came, wrapped in cold air and soft snowfall. The kind that clung to car roofs and made the world feel strangely clean. Ethan insisted on driving me. Even though I said I could manage, he didn't argue. He simply handed me my coat, opened the car door, and said, let's get this over with. His calmness steadied me, though my stomach tightened more with every mile we drove toward my parents' neighborhood. Their house looked exactly the way I remembered it, perfectly curated, perfectly lit, perfectly staged for outsiders to admire. The bushes along the walkway sparkled with LED lights. A giant inflatable reindeer stood by the porch. Through the wide front windows, I could see the Christmas tree, an enormous 12-foot fir covered in gold ribbons, expensive ornaments, and enough lights to illuminate the whole block. It was beautiful in a magazine cover kind of way, beautiful and hollow inside. The warmth hit me first, the smell of roasted turkey, cloves, cinnamon sugar cookies, and the faint chemical sweetness of my mother's holiday candle collection. Christmas music played softly in the background, an instrumental playlist meant to set a mood rather than be noticed. Everything was curated. Everything was staged. It was the kind of holiday scene people posted online to show the world how perfect their family was. Look who's here. An aunt called out, her tone bright but thin. She gave me a quick air kiss, her eyes darting down to my crutch before flicking away as if she'd seen something inappropriate. I offered a polite smile, pretending not to notice. Another cousin approached, offering a strained, "How have you been?" before stepping back a little too quickly, like my pain might be contagious. Everyone greeted me the same way, warm enough to be polite, cool enough to show discomfort. No one acknowledged the obvious. No one asked earnestly how I was doing. Their eyes said what their mouths didn't. Don't bring your problems into our picture-perfect night. My mother finally approached, wiping her hands on a holiday-themed apron. She smiled the rehearsed smile she used with guests, tight, brittle, eager to impress. "You made it," she said. "Try not to overdo things tonight. Just relax." Relax. As if existing here wasn't an exercise in tension. My father clapped my shoulder lightly, the way people touch objects they're unsure about. "Dinner's almost ready," he said, before quickly walking off to greet someone else. I could feel Ethan beside me, his posture straight, his eyes quietly scanning the room, gauging, observing, already protective. He blended easily into the background, letting me take the lead while staying close enough to catch me if I stumbled. I was grateful he didn't step forward yet. This wasn't the moment. But then my mother clapped her hands together excitedly. "Everyone, before we start dinner, we have something special this year." Her eyes sparkled with pride. "We hired a Santa for the kids, and he's fantastic. Very authentic." A ripple of impressed murmurs passed through the room. I followed their gaze toward the tree, where I noticed, just barely, a tall figure lurking behind the branches. A familiar posture. Broad shoulders. Red velvet. White gloves. A thick belt and a sack slung over one shoulder. The Santa costume looked expensive, professional, the kind parents rented for staged photos. But what made my heart skip wasn't the outfit. It was the stance, the subtle tilt of the head, the way he rested his weight on one leg. Something about it tugged at me, something I couldn't name yet. I didn't have time to study him further. Dinner was called, and we moved toward the long, polished table overflowing with dishes. My sister was already seated near the head, laughter bursting from her like confetti as she told a dramatic story about her workplace. Her boyfriend sat beside her, nodding numbly as she bragged. My parents flanked the table like hosts at a charity gala, perfectly poised. As I took my seat slowly, carefully, I felt the familiar prickle of anxiety under my skin. I tried to breathe through it, telling myself to survive the next couple of hours and then leave. My sister's voice cut through my thoughts. "So," she said, leaning back in her chair, "work must be slow for you." Her tone was syrupy sweet with a blade underneath. "I mean, at least you don't have to deal with crazy holiday schedules, right? Perks of not really working." The table chuckled politely. Even her boyfriend managed a weak smile. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but forced myself to keep my expression neutral. "I work plenty," I said quietly. My sister waved me off like swatting a fly. "Freelancing from your couch doesn't count. You don't even have to change out of pajamas." She laughed, taking a sip of wine. Imagine being that lucky. I didn't look at my parents. I already knew what I'd see. The tight smiles. The subtle discomfort. The refusal to intervene. They didn't correct her. They never did. They preferred the version of me that was small and pitiful. The version that made my sister's spotlight shine brighter. The conversation flowed around me, full of holiday plans, vacation stories, promotions, new purchases, gossip about neighbors. Every topic a reminder of how much they believed I didn't have, or didn't deserve. My sister talked about her upcoming trip to Aspen, how her boss adored her work ethic, how she was thinking of buying a new car because the old one just feels outdated. She looked at me when she said it, eyes gleaming with triumph. "Some of us actually earn what we have," she added lightly. My fork paused midair. Ethan's hand touched my knee under the table, a grounding gesture. I breathed. My mother changed the subject abruptly, laughing too loudly, desperate to keep the mood cheerful for the guests. Anything that risked conflict was treated like a stain on her perfect holiday image. But I saw it. The quiet look she exchanged with my father, an unspoken agreement. Don't encourage her. Don't contradict her sister. Don't ruin the picture. Their silence wrapped around me like barbed wire. At one point, my aunt leaned in and whispered, "You should smile more, dear. Don't look so tense. It's Christmas." She didn't understand that every muscle in my body was working to hold me together. From the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Santa again, half hidden behind the tree, still and watchful. Something about the way he observed the room made my pulse quicken. There was intention there. He wasn't just an actor waiting for his cue. He was waiting for something else, watching everything. Dinner dragged on. Each comment from my sister pressing deeper into old wounds. Each laugh at my expense. Each dismissive glance from my parents. Each attempt to pretend I didn't exist. It all built towards something I could feel but not yet name. The night was poised on a knife's edge. I could sense it. The tension. The fragility. The humiliation brewing beneath the surface. And Santa wasn't the only one watching. Ethan was too. But his time to step forward hadn't come yet. Not yet. Because the real breaking point, the one that would shatter everything they thought they knew about me, was still waiting, just beyond this perfect, glittering facade of a Christmas night. After dinner, the house shifted into that familiar post-meal chaos. Chairs scraping back, glasses clinking, relatives gathering their children, and the soft shuffle of bodies moving toward the living room where the giant tree waited with a mountain of wrapped gifts beneath it. Christmas music played faintly from the speakers, cheerful and warm, a stark contrast to the tightening feeling in my chest. I stood slowly, gripping my crutch with both hands, giving my leg a moment to adjust before I tried to move. The room felt smaller now. The lights too bright. Every pair of eyes quickly glancing at me, and then away. People were careful not to stare too long. They didn't want to be rude, but their discomfort drifted around me like smoke. I had brought a small gift for my mother. Nothing extravagant, just something thoughtful tucked under the tree earlier. I wanted to retrieve it before the chaos of present opening began. Or maybe I simply wanted to do something with my hands. Something to anchor myself in that room, where I always felt out of place. I took a slow step, then another, heading toward the coffee table. But before I could reach it, my sister stepped into my path. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never once been told to shrink herself. Her wine glass dangled lazily from her fingers, her smile sharp and gleaming. "Well," she said loudly, loud enough that 3 conversations around us went quiet. "Look at her, hobbling around like she's starring in some tragic holiday movie." I stiffened. "I'm just getting something." "Oh, relax," she said, rolling her eyes dramatically. "No one's going to steal your sad little present." A couple of cousins chuckled under their breath. My aunt looked at me with pity, which somehow felt worse. I stepped sideways to go around her, but she moved with me, blocking my path like it was a game. "You know," she continued, raising her voice even more, "it's honestly exhausting watching you pretend to be so helpless all the time. We all know you enjoy the attention." My throat tightened. "Please move." She didn't. She leaned closer, her eyes bright with something I recognized too well. Years of resentment sharpened into cruelty. "People with real disabilities don't brag about them," she said. "You milk yours like it's some kind of personality trait." That sentence hit me with the force of a slap. The room grew quieter. Even the children seemed to pause, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "I don't brag about anything." My voice trembled despite my effort to keep it steady. "Right?" She laughed. "Because limping around and sighing dramatically isn't attention-seeking at all." She turned to the people nearby. "Honestly, some of you haven't seen her walk normally, but I have. It's all an act." And then she did it. The moment that would replay in my mind for months to come. She reached for my crutch. I felt her fingers brush the metal and instinctively tightened my grip. But she was faster, stronger. With a harsh jerk, she ripped the crutch from my hands and flung it aside. It clattered loudly on the hardwood floor, the sound slicing through the room. "Stop faking it. You're just leeching," she screamed. The shout echoed off the walls. It was so loud, so hateful, that even the music seemed to hesitate for a beat. My balance vanished instantly. My leg buckled. My body pitched forward and I fell hard. My hips slammed against the floor, pain shooting up my side. My palms scraped along the wood. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. A gasp rippled across the room, followed by, unbelievably, a few bursts of laughter. Not nervous laughter, real laughter. And worse, the sound of someone saying, "Oh my God, record this. It's crazy." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my aunt lift her phone. A cousin tilted theirs for a better angle. A child stared at me with wide, confused eyes while their mother whispered something that made them look away. My face burned with humiliation. I pushed myself halfway up, wincing, but without the crutch, I couldn't get my balance. I wasn't even sure I wanted to stand anymore. This is part of my therapy. I tried to explain, my voice shaking. My doctor said, but Andrew, another cousin, cut me off with a mocking shrug. "Oh, please. I literally saw you walking at the clinic without anything. You look totally normal." "That's right," my aunt chimed in, the phone still in her hand. "Don't play games here. This is family." Family? The word twisted in my stomach. I turned toward my mother first. She stood frozen near the sofa, her eyes wide, her lips pressed into a thin line. She wasn't horrified by what my sister had done. She was horrified that it was happening in front of guests. She wouldn't meet my gaze. My father pretended he hadn't noticed at all. "I should, check on the wine," he muttered, already walking away, fleeing the scene like a coward. My sister folded her arms triumphantly, as if she had exposed me, as if she had done something noble. "See? She can get up. She's fine. She just makes everything dramatic." I looked around the room for a friendly face. Anyone who might help me up. No one moved. Not one person stepped forward. Their eyes skated over me with discomfort, embarrassment, annoyance. And in that moment, sitting on the cold floor of my parents' living room, surrounded by people who shared my blood but not my humanity, I realized something sharp and devastating. They didn't see me as family. They didn't see me as a daughter. They didn't even see me as a person. I was entertainment, a spectacle, a burden. Christmas. This night that was supposed to be warm, nostalgic, full of love, had become a public trial, a performance where my pain was evidence, and my sister was the star witness. My chest tightened. I fought to keep the tears from spilling, not because I didn't hurt, but because I refused to give them the satisfaction. And then, from behind the towering Christmas tree, the Santa figure stepped forward, slow, deliberate steps that cut through the painful buzzing in my ears. He walked straight toward us, the white gloves glowing under the string lights, the red velvet brushing softly against the wrapped presents as he passed. No one laughed anymore. My sister's confidence faltered as the man in red approached. His hand rose, calm and steady, and rested on her shoulder. Everything in the room stilled. Every voice died. Every eye turned. And before he spoke a word, before the 6 words that would detonate through the room, I felt it, the first shift of power. But the worst moment of my life had already happened, and they had all watched it like a show. The room froze around me, like someone had sucked all the sound and warmth out of the air. I was still on the floor, my palms stinging, my hip throbbing, my breath trembling in shallow bursts. My sister stood over me, chest rising and falling with the adrenaline of her outburst. Her chin lifted, as if she'd won something. People whispered. A few phones still pointed in my direction. Someone muttered, "Is she okay?" but made no move to help. And then the atmosphere shifted. It was subtle at first, a hush that rippled outward, pressing against the walls. The children stopped fidgeting. My aunt lowered her phone. Even the music seemed to fade into the background. All eyes turned toward the Christmas tree. Santa stepped forward. Slow, deliberate steps. The red velvet suit brushed softly against the lower branches, scattering a few needles across the floor. The white-gloved hand tightened briefly around the strap of the sack slung over his shoulder. His boots creaked against the wood as he walked, each step echoing in the unnerving stillness that had fallen over the room. He moved until he was standing directly between me and my sister. My sister's bravado wavered. She shifted her weight, one hand dropping self-consciously to her side, as if the sudden presence of this imposing figure in red had unsettled her. Santa turned toward her fully. Then, with a calmness that cut sharper than any shout, he placed one gloved hand on her shoulder. His touch wasn't harsh, but it was firm enough to still her completely. You could feel the energy shift, the power slipping out of her grasp like sand through fingers. Everyone waited. Santa inhaled slowly. Then he spoke low, steady, unmistakable. "She's not faking. I am her doctor." 6 words. 6 words that detonated through the room like a gunshot. My sister's mouth dropped open. My aunt's phone fell to her lap. My father paused mid-pour at the drinks table, the wine bottle shaking slightly in his hand. My mother blinked, stunned, as if someone had slapped her awake from a dream she'd spent years convincing herself was real. Santa didn't move. He stood tall and unshaken, one hand still on my sister's shoulder, the other slowly reaching up toward his own face, his fingers curled around the edge of his fake beard. With one smooth motion, he pulled it down. The beard dropped to his chest. Then he removed the hat. And suddenly, Santa wasn't Santa anymore. He was Ethan. My doctor. My partner. My anchor. I heard someone gasp loudly. Maybe my mother. Maybe one of the cousins. It didn't matter. The room had gone stone silent as the truth unfurled. My sister stared at him like she couldn't process what she was seeing. "What?" she stammered. You're the Santa they hired." "No," Ethan said, his voice steady, the edge of anger beneath it razor sharp. "I'm the Santa I arranged to be here." Confusion rippled through the room. My mother finally found her voice. But we booked a professional online." "I intercepted the booking before you confirmed it," Ethan replied without looking away from my sister. "I had a feeling tonight wouldn't be safe for her." The words dropped like stones. "Safe," he said. "Safe. As if danger lived in this house." And the truth was, it did. Not danger of the physical sort, but the kind that strips a person of dignity, piece by piece, until they forget they deserve better. The kind of psychological cruelty that masqueraded as family tradition. Ethan turned away from my sister and finally knelt down beside me. His movements were gentle, practiced hands sliding under my arm, bracing my back, supporting my weight as he helped me sit upright. His eyes scanned my face first, then my leg, assessing the pain without needing me to speak. "You fell hard," he murmured. "Are you dizzy?" "A little," I whispered. My sister took a shaky step back. "This is ridiculous. She's exaggerating." Ethan lifted his head. "No," he said sharply. "She's not." He stood again, pulling his phone from the deep pocket of the Santa coat. With a few taps, he connected it to the large smart TV mounted on the wall. The screen lit up, and suddenly footage filled the room. Me struggling through a therapy session, my hands shaking as I clung to the wall bars, my steps slow and uneven, sweat dripping down my temple, my face tight with pain while Ethan guided me gently, encouraging me to take one more step. Then another clip, my leg trembling underweight, the moment it buckled, the way he caught me. Clip after clip, each one a truth my family had refused to believe. Proof etched into pixels and sound. A hush fell again. "This," Ethan said, sweeping a hand toward the screen, "is what she deals with every day. She's in recovery from multiple injuries. Her nerve function is compromised. Her balance is unstable. Every step she takes requires effort. Real, painful effort." He turned to the room. "And tonight, instead of supporting her, you assaulted her." A few jaws dropped. Someone exhaled shakily. A cousin whispered, "Oh my God." My sister's face strained of color. I didn't assault her. I was just..." "You grabbed her crutch," Ethan said, eyes cold, "and physically removed her mobility aid. That is violence." The word hit the room like another explosion. My mother took a step forward, hands clasped as if praying. "We didn't know." "No," Ethan cut in. "You chose not to know." He tapped his phone again. Medical charts appeared on the screen. MRI scans, treatment plans, doctor's notes. My entire medical truth laid bare because my family had never cared enough to ask for it. For years, he said slowly, you've questioned her pain. You've dismissed her symptoms. You've called her dramatic, lazy, manipulative. You let rumors define your daughter instead of asking her what was real. He turned toward my father, who looked as if his spine had dissolved. You saw her fall and walked away. My father swallowed hard. I thought it was better not to embarrass her by making a scene. No, Ethan snapped. You didn't want to embarrass yourself. My mother's face crumpled, but she still didn't step forward. Still didn't kneel. Still didn't touch me. Ethan looked down at me, and his voice softened. Not for them, but for me alone. You deserved better than this, he whispered. Then he straightened. And for everyone's clarity, he announced, I recorded what happened tonight. Her fall, the comments, the laughter, the intimidation, the insults. All of it. Gasps burst around the room like popcorn. This is harassment, he continued. And discrimination against someone with a disability. If she wishes, we can take this to the authorities. My sister shook her head violently. You wouldn't. He looked at her without blinking. Try me. Silence flooded the room again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of dismissal. It was the silence of consequences. The silence of people realizing the roles had shifted. For the first time that night, and perhaps for the first time ever, I wasn't the one being examined. They were. Every eye turned toward me, not with pity, not with derision, but with an unease that came from being forced to confront the truth. The truth my sister had tried to rip away with my crutch. The truth Ethan had dragged into the light with 6 words. The truth that none of them could bury anymore, because the night had changed, and so had I. The silence that followed Ethan's words wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating, thick, heavy. The kind of silence people create when they suddenly realize they've been watching the wrong villain in the story. My aunt was the first to move. She lowered her phone so fast it nearly slipped from her hands, shoving it into her purse, as if destroying the evidence could erase the fact that she'd been recording my humiliation like it was holiday entertainment. A cousin beside her looked down at the floor, cheeks crimson, unable to meet anyone's eyes. One by one, the expressions in the room shifted from amusement to discomfort, from smug superiority to shame. My sister, usually so sharp and poised, looked caught between anger and panic, her mouth open, then closed. She took a step forward, her voice wobbling. I didn't mean it like that. I was just worried about Mom and Dad. I didn't want you to what? I interrupted. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room was so quiet, I could have whispered and every person would have heard me. My sister swallowed. To embarrass them. I let out a small, disbelieving laugh. Embarrass them? You shoved me to the floor in front of our entire family. You called me a leech. You said I was faking a medical condition. My voice cracked, anger and exhaustion tightening around each word. And you think I am the embarrassment? My mother winced, barely, but didn't step closer. I took a breath, feeling Ethan's steady presence beside me. His hand hovered near my back, close enough to offer support, but not close enough to speak for me. This moment wasn't his to take. It was mine. For years, I began slowly. You all made me feel like I was a burden, like my existence was some inconvenience everyone had to tolerate. I grew up hearing whispers that I was fragile, that I wasn't trying hard enough, that I was playing sick. I learned to hide my pain, not because I wanted attention, but because I knew the moment I showed any, you'd accuse me of exaggerating. My father looked away, jaw tightening as if the truth offended him. And tonight, my voice trembled, but I kept going. Tonight was the perfect example of what my life in this family has always been. You didn't ask if I was hurt. You didn't help me stand. You didn't even blink when I hit the ground. I looked around at each familiar face. Faces that had watched me fall since childhood. Not one of you. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. A cousin bit their lip. My sister crossed her arms like a shield. And you. I said, turning back to her. You were so eager to expose me that you didn't even consider you might be wrong. You didn't care about the truth. You cared about the performance. You cared about proving a point. I shook my head slowly. But the only thing you proved is how little you've ever seen me. My sister's eyes glistened, not with remorse, no, with embarrassment, fear, consequences she hadn't expected. My mother finally spoke, her voice so soft it barely carried. Honey, we didn't know. Ethan let out a low, humorless laugh. You didn't want to know. My mother flinched, but still didn't deny it. Ethan straightened, slipping his phone into his pocket. Just to be clear, he said to the entire room, I recorded everything tonight. The fall, the comments, the taunts, the disregard. If she wants to press charges. My father's head snapped up. Charges? You can't be serious. It's harassment, Ethan said, his voice calm but unyielding. And discrimination. What happened here is legally actionable and morally disgusting. My father fell silent, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. I placed my hand gently on Ethan's arm. Let's go. His eyes met mine, warm, steady, ready to protect. I tried to push myself up, but a wave of dizziness hit me. Before Ethan could move, someone else stepped forward. My cousin Lily, the quiet one, the one who'd watched but never laughed, knelt down and offered her hand. Here, she whispered. I've got you. I hesitated, surprised. She glanced at me, guilt clouding her eyes. I should have helped sooner. Her voice trembled with sincerity. I nodded and let her steady me as Ethan carefully lifted me upright, placing my crutch back under my arm. The room watched silently as the three of us stood together. Me, the girl they tried to belittle. Ethan, the man who refused to let them, and Lily, the first person in this house to show basic humanity. We walked slowly toward the front door. Behind me, my sister's voice cracked. Wait, just wait. We can talk about this. My father muttered something like, let's not be dramatic. My mother whispered, just sit down. We can fix this. I stopped at the doorway and turned back, gripping my crutch for balance. Their faces, worried, ashamed, shrinking, blurred into a single image I'd known all my life. People who cared more about appearances than they ever cared about me. I drew in a breath, feeling something inside me harden and settle into place. Tonight wasn't my breaking point, I said quietly. It was your reflection. They froze. I continued, voice steady. On this Christmas night, I wasn't the problem. Your silence was. My sister gasped softly. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked as if someone had punched him in the chest. I turned away before anyone could respond, because I didn't know them answers or forgiveness or explanations. Not anymore. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in, sharp and clean, washing the stifling warmth of the house off my skin. Ethan placed a hand on my back as we stepped outside. Lily whispered a soft Merry Christmas before closing the door behind us. And for the first time in my life, leaving felt like salvation, not loss. The night air outside my parents' house had been cold, but the hours after leaving felt even colder. Ethan helped me into the car, buckled my seatbelt gently, and drove without saying much, only reaching over once in a while to squeeze my hand when my breathing turned shaky. Shame clung to me like frost. My hip throbbed where I'd fallen. My palms burned. But none of it compared to the ache sitting like a stone in my chest. We went straight to the hospital. The fluorescent lights in the ER made everything feel harsher, sharper. A nurse brought me a warm blanket. Ethan explained what had happened, choosing clinical language, even though his voice shook with anger. The doctor ran x-rays, checked my vitals, examined the bruising spreading across my hip. Physically, I was lucky. Nothing new was broken. No concussion. The pain would take days to settle, but the damage was mostly emotional, a phrase the doctor used with a sympathetic look. High stress can worsen nerve pain, he added. Take it easy, rest, and avoid environments that trigger this kind of trauma. Avoid environments. He meant my family. 2 days later, Ethan and I sat in a quiet office decorated with framed certificates and soft beige walls. A disability rights attorney who specialized in harassment and discrimination cases. She had a calm presence, the kind that made speaking feel easier. Ethan played the video he recorded on Christmas. The moment my sister yanked my crutch. The fall. The laughter. The comments. The phones raised like spectators at a circus. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the heater. When the attorney finally spoke, her tone was firm. This isn't just cruelty. This is harassment. Targeted humiliation. And the removal of a mobility aid can legally be considered assault. My stomach flipped. Hearing it labeled as something real, as something wrong, made my throat tighten. You have a case, she continued. If you want to pursue it, even if you don't press charges, you can file a civil claim. What happened to you is not only morally unacceptable, it's unlawful. I nodded slowly. I didn't know what I wanted yet. The idea of a lawsuit against my family made me feel sick, but pretending nothing happened felt even worse. We'll think about it, Ethan said gently, placing a comforting hand on my back. The attorney gave me a card and told me to reach out when I was ready. The video didn't remain only in the attorney's office. Ethan had saved 2 versions, the full recording and a shorter clip with faces blurred, just the sound of my sister yelling, the image of my crutch being torn from my hands, and the crowd reaction. It was the shorter version he uploaded anonymously to an online disability advocacy forum, hoping for advice. He didn't expect it to explode. Within hours, it jumped platforms. Someone posted it on Twitter, another on TikTok. Overnight, it gathered millions of views. Strangers debated it, dissected it, condemned it. The audio, my sister's scream, "Stop faking it, you're just leeching," became one of the most recognizable, infuriating 6 seconds on social media for a week straight. Comments flooded in. Who rips a crutch from someone? That's assault. As a disabled person, this is my worst nightmare. I hope she never speaks to her family again. This is abuse, not a Christmas moment. Her Santa deserves an award. People didn't know it was me. They didn't know the faces behind the blurred shapes. But they knew cruelty when they saw it, and they were angry. The fallout began almost instantly. My sister's workplace recognized her blurry silhouette, her voice, her jewelry. HR called her in for a meeting. Her boss, who prided himself on a family-friendly, inclusive image, was not pleased. She wasn't fired exactly, but she was removed from a leadership track. A promotion she had been bragging about for weeks suddenly evaporated. A few coworkers unfollowed her on social media. Her carefully curated online persona, responsible daughter, successful career woman, started to crack. My parents didn't suffer workplace consequences. But in a small suburban community, reputation travels fast. A few neighbors reached out to me privately, apologizing for things they had never done, embarrassed by what they'd learned. My parents' church group gossiped behind closed doors. Some stopped inviting them to events. The image my parents had spent decades building, the perfect family, the perfect daughters, crumbled in less than a day. As for my aunt, someone recognized her voice in the video, laughing, saying, "Record this." It's crazy. The local Facebook moms group tore her apart. She deleted her account for a week. Meanwhile, I did something I never thought I would. I wrote. Not a full story at first, just a short post on a disability support blog under a pseudonym. A few paragraphs about what happened, how it felt, what it means when the people who should protect you become the ones who hurt you most. I expected maybe 1 or 2 comments, pity perhaps, or judgment. Instead, within an hour, over 300 people responded. People who had been mocked, dismissed, gaslit, accused of exaggeration, humiliated for using mobility aids, ridiculed by their own families. Stories poured in, raw and unfiltered. My dad told me to walk normally on Christmas, too. My sister said I fake my pain for attention. My cousin snatched my cane once. I fell and broke my wrist. I'm crying reading your story. I've lived it. I read every single comment. Some made me cry. Some made me angry. Some made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced. I responded to a few, shared small pieces of my heart I had kept hidden for years. And for the first time, I realized something powerful. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. And I wasn't the villain they made me out to be. My pain was real. My experience was real. My voice was real, and people were listening. Ethan saw the change in my face as I read the comments. Something uncoiling. Something long buried, rising back to the surface. "You're not invisible anymore," he said softly. "No," I thought. "Not anymore." And I wouldn't let myself be ever again. A full year passed, though in many ways it felt like I had lived an entire lifetime between those two Christmases. The woman who had walked, or rather, trembled into my parents' house 12 months earlier was not the woman who lived here now. My recovery was slow, but steady. Therapy became part of my weekly rhythm. And though I still relied on my crutch and occasionally my wheelchair on harder days, I moved with more confidence than I ever had. My body was still unpredictable, but I no longer saw that unpredictability as something to apologize for. Instead, I learned to listen to it, honor it, and fight for it the way I once wished someone would fight for me. My blog had grown, too. What started as a single anonymous post had turned into a space where thousands of people shared their stories. Mothers, students, veterans, teens, people with disabilities, chronic illnesses, trauma, and scars no one could see. Over time, I added a podcast and short-form videos, each episode focusing on boundaries, self-worth, pain, healing, and the complexities of family. My voice, once shaky and unsure, found its purpose. The shock came when a disability advocacy organization nominated my platform for a small community award. I didn't think much of it, but then I won. Standing on stage with my crutch beside me, delivering a short speech about visibility and dignity, I felt something I had never felt growing up. I felt proud of myself. Ethan was there in the audience, smiling like the world had finally caught up to what he'd seen in me all along. He and I had grown, too. Stronger, closer, softer with one another. He wasn't just my doctor anymore, nor just my partner. He had become my home. On one quiet evening, he talked gently about rings. Not a proposal yet, just a conversation, a possibility, a shared future. And for the first time in my life, the idea didn't frighten me. It felt like the logical next step in a life I was finally choosing for myself. When December rolled around again, the memories of last year surfaced. But the pain no longer swallowed me as whole as it once had. It sat inside me quietly, something I acknowledged, understood, and no longer feared. It was part of my story, not the definition of it. My parents sent a message on December 22nd. "It's been a year. Come home for Christmas. Let's put last year behind us." Then another from my mother. "We just want things to be normal again. The family misses you." And for my father, "Let's heal. Come for dinner. Don't be stubborn." For a long moment, I simply stared at the screen. A year ago, messages like that would have lit hope inside me, would have made me question myself, bend myself into someone softer, smaller, more forgiving. Now, I only felt an unexpected calm. I typed back a simple response. "I appreciate the invitation. Wishing you both a peaceful Christmas. No promises, no excuses, no return home." Then I put my phone face down and didn't pick it up again. On Christmas Eve, my apartment glowed with soft, warm lights. The tree in the corner was only half decorated. My friends insisted on finishing the other half themselves. The living room smelled like cinnamon, hot cocoa, and gingerbread. Laughter filled the space, low and genuine. People sprawled across my couch and floor, my chosen family. Some were friends from work. Some were members of the disability community I'd connected with online. One was a woman who had messaged me after the Christmas video went viral, saying she understood. Another was a man with a mobility aid of his own, who became a friend after we exchanged messages about chronic pain and boundaries. Ethan emerged from the hallway wearing half of a Santa suit, the hat and the coat, but not the beard. He handed out small gifts from a shopping bag instead of a sack, and everyone teased him affectionately. "Next year," I said, smiling. "You're going full costume again." He grinned. Only if you promise not to traumatize me with another Christmas dinner. I laughed a full, easy, unbroken laugh I hadn't experienced in years. And for the first time, it didn't feel like laughter stolen from pain. It felt like a new chapter entirely. When we gathered around the table, a smaller one than the one in my parents' house, mismatched chairs and all, I looked around at the faces glowing in the candlelight. People who didn't share my blood, but shared something deeper. Humanity, empathy, choice. My chosen family. At some point in the evening, my phone buzzed. A new message from my mother. We waited for you. Please call when you can. I read it quietly, then placed the phone aside without replying. The message didn't tear at me the way it once would have, because the truth was clear. Now pain might linger. History might stay written. But I no longer needed to return to a place that had never protected me. Ethan slid into the chair beside me, his arm brushing mine. You okay? Yes, I said, surprising myself. I actually am. He smiled softly, reaching under the table to squeeze my hand. The warmth of his touch settled into my chest, grounding me in the moment. As the night unfolded, gifts exchanged, stories shared, cookies devoured, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed. How much I had changed. No longer shrinking. No longer apologizing. No longer waiting for acceptance from people incapable of giving it. I looked around the room once more and realized something simple and profound. This was Christmas. This was love. This was home. And I had built it myself, piece by piece, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. Not from the family I was born into, but from the family I chose. As the night in my apartment wound down, laughter softened into gentle conversations, mugs clinked against one another, and someone put on a playlist of slow, cozy Christmas songs. I leaned back in my chair, watching the people around me, the mismatched, imperfect, beautiful group that had become my sanctuary. And somewhere between their smiles and the warm glow of the string lights, my mind drifted back to that Christmas a year ago. The fall. The sting of the hardwood floor. The laughter. The silence. The way my sister's fingers tightened around my crutch before she ripped it away. I used to replay that moment with shame. Now I replay it with clarity. Because the truth is this: if that night hadn't happened, if I hadn't been pushed to the ground in front of everyone, if Ethan hadn't stepped out from behind the tree, if the truth hadn't stripped the room bare, I might have kept pretending. I might have stayed the quiet daughter, the accommodating one, the one who bent until she nearly snapped. I would have sat through another holiday pretending I was okay, pretending the hurt didn't matter, pretending their silence wasn't suffocating me. But that fall drew a line in the sand. A line between a family that claimed me and a family that chose me. Between people who watched me collapse and people who helped me stand. Between those who knew my pain and those who refused to see it. And now, looking around my small apartment at the faces that felt like home, I finally understood something I'd been too afraid to admit. You don't have to prove your pain to people who are invested in doubting it. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into a version of family that only functions if you stay small. Strength isn't measured by how long you endure mistreatment. It's measured by the moment you decide you deserve better. Sometimes healing isn't walking further, it's walking away. I stood slowly, adjusting my crutch, and looked at the tiny Christmas tree in the corner. Simple handmade ornaments. A star friend had 3D printed for me. Lights that flickered softly, like a heartbeat. Ethan caught my gaze from the couch. No Santa suit this time, just him, laughing at a joke one of my friends told. When he noticed me looking, he gave me that quiet smile that still melted something inside me. Not pity, not obligation, just love. Real, steady, unquestioning love. And in that moment, I knew this was Christmas. This was peace. This was the life I had built on the other side of pain. If your Christmas has ever felt like mine once did, full of judgment, comparison, or quiet cruelty, ask yourself this. Would you choose to stay at that table, or would you choose yourself and walk away? And where are you listening to this story from tonight?
Tell me.
I want to know how far this journey reaches. How many people out there are reclaiming their voice, their dignity, and their peace? Because as I sit here in front of my little tree, surrounded by the people who truly see me, I understand something I wish I had known all my life. Family isn't defined by blood. Family is defined by love. And I've finally found mine. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt that gut-wrenching choice between loyalty and your own integrity, then you know this feeling. You're not alone. I want to hear your story too. Share it in the comments below, or just let me know what part hit you the hardest. If you believe in standing up for what's right, even when it's terrifying, please give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe to join this community, where we talk about finding our strength, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's next. Your support helps amplify these vital conversations. Thank you for listening.